The neighbors brought me a casserole on my first night. 3 weeks later, I found out why they needed me to eat it. If you've ever moved to a new town and felt that creeping sense that something's not quite right, you need to hear this. Hit subscribe now because we drop 3 bone-chilling true stories every week. And trust me, after what you're about to hear, you'll want to know you're not alone. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and let's dive in. My name's Dwayne, and I was 29 when I moved to Millbrook Falls, Vermont. Fresh divorce, fresh start, the usual story. I found a rental on Facebook Marketplace, stupid cheap for what it was. A whole house for $800 a month. The landlord said it had been empty for a while. Folks just didn't stick around. I should have asked why. I pulled up on a Tuesday afternoon in late September. The house was small, yellow paint peeling at the corners, but it had character. Before I even finished unloading my first box, an elderly couple appeared on my porch. She had white hair pulled into a tight bun. He wore suspenders and a flannel shirt that looked older than me. "We made you something," Mrs. Fenway said, holding out a ceramic dish wrapped in foil. "To welcome you properly." I thanked them, set it on the counter. It smelled incredible. Beef and mushroom, rich and earthy. But I was exhausted. I just wanted to collapse. I put it in the fridge and forgot about it. That night, I woke to scratching. Soft, persistent, coming from under the floorboards. I told myself it was mice. Old house, right? But the sound was too rhythmic. Too deliberate. Morning came. The Fenways knocked again before I'd even had coffee. "Just checking in," Mr. Fenway said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "How'd you sleep? Did you enjoy dinner?" I lied. "Yeah, it was delicious." "Slept great." Their smiles faltered. "Just barely." But I saw it. Over the next few days, they brought more. Brownies. A loaf of bread that smelled like heaven. I ate a cookie to be polite. It tasted wrong. Bitter aftertaste that clung to my tongue. That night, the nightmare started. Vivid, suffocating dreams where I was buried alive, soil filling my mouth, my lungs. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. And at 3 in the morning, I saw him. A figure standing in my backyard, perfectly still, staring at my bedroom window. I blinked. He was gone. I started noticing things. Missing person flyers stapled to telephone poles. All young men. All in their 20s. All moved to town within the last decade. I found an old newspaper clipping in the basement while looking for the breaker box. Millbrook Falls, unusual wildlife patterns baffle experts. Dated 1987. The article talked about aggressive scavenging behavior and contaminated food sources. It didn't say what was scavenging, or what the food was. Then I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Don't eat anything they give you." My hands shook as I typed back. No response. I confronted the Fenways. Showed them the text. Mrs. Fenway started crying. "We're trying to help you," she sobbed. Her husband put a hand on her shoulder, then walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. "If you don't eat what we give you," he said quietly, "they'll know you're not one of us." I looked outside. My stomach dropped. Dozens of them. Standing at the tree line behind the houses. Tall, impossibly thin, covered in what looked like moss and soil. Their limbs were too long, their mouths stretched too wide. They didn't move. They just watched. "The food masks your scent," Mr. Fenway said. "Makes you smell like the ground here. Like you belong. If they can tell you're different, if they can smell you're not from here, they come for you." I stepped back from the window. "Who are you people?" Mrs. Fenway wiped her eyes. "We're not from here originally. None of us are. We all moved here. We all got welcomed." She pulled out a photo album. Page after page of men who'd lived in my house. Different decades, different faces, but the same terror in their eyes. The ones who didn't eat, Mr. Fenway said softly, they went into the woods. They didn't come back. I opened the fridge, pulled out the casserole, peeled back the foil. Mixed throughout the beef and mushrooms was a thick layer of dark soil. Actual dirt. And the mushrooms, I realized with horror, weren't from any store. You're eating the ground, Mrs. Fenway whispered. It changes your blood. Makes you part of this place. They can tell. That night I tried to leave. My car wouldn't start. I popped the hood. Sugar in the gas tank. I heard them before I saw them. Dozens of footsteps. The figures emerged from the woods, moving toward the houses with that jerking, unnatural gait. They stopped at each home, tilting their heads, sniffing the air. They passed the Fenway's house without pausing. They kept coming toward mine. I ran inside, locked every door, every window. The scratching under the floorboards grew louder. Frantic. I realized with sickening clarity that the house was built over something. Over their nest. They weren't just outside. They were already underneath. I grabbed the casserole, forced myself into the bathroom, and locked the door. My hands shook as I lifted a spoonful to my mouth. The dirt tasted like rotten metal. The meat, I didn't want to think about what it really was. I vomited. Kept eating. Vomited again. Kept eating. The scratching stopped. The house went silent. At dawn, the Fenways knocked. You ate it, didn't you? Mrs. Fenway said. We could tell. What happens if I stop? I asked. She looked at her husband. Then back at me. Her eyes filled with tears. We don't know, she whispered. None of us have ever tried. I found my lease agreement later that day. Buried in the paperwork I'd signed without reading. 50-year term. Non-transferable. No early termination clause. I didn't rent this house. I was assigned to it. That was 6 months ago. The Fenways died last week. Heart attacks, the coroner said. Both on the same night. A new couple moved into their place yesterday. Older, kind-looking. I watched them unpack from my window. This morning, I made a casserole. I had to, because now I'm the one who welcomes people. And I can't stop. Our neighborhood had a perfect safety record. 0 break-ins, 0 crime, 0 problems. I found out why when I tried to leave. My name's Jolene, and 2 years ago I moved to Riverside Meadows, a planned community just outside Phoenix, Arizona. The place looked like it had been designed by someone who'd never seen a real neighborhood before. Everything was too perfect, too symmetrical, too controlled. Gated entrance with armed security. He managed down to the smallest detail. Every house painted the exact same shade of beige. Even the mailboxes were identical. The sales agent, a woman with teeth too white and a smile too wide, kept repeating the same phrase over and over during my tour. Safest neighborhood in the state. Safest neighborhood in the state. Like a mantra. Like a warning I was too stupid to understand. The contract was standard. Or so I thought. Monthly HOA fees. Mandatory participation in community events. Rules about lawn maintenance and exterior modifications. I signed without reading the fine print. That was my first mistake. I moved in on a Saturday in early June. The heat was oppressive, the kind that makes the air shimmer and your lungs feel like they're being cooked from the inside. My moving truck pulled up at 9 in the morning, and within minutes, 3 neighbors appeared. Not to help, just to watch. They stood on their perfect lawns with their perfect smiles, arms crossed, observing every box I carried inside. "Welcome to Riverside Meadows," one of them said. A man in his 50s with silver hair and polo shirt tucked into khaki shorts. "We're very particular about maintaining standards here." "Thanks," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. "I'll do my best." "I'm sure you will," he replied. His smile never reached his eyes. By the second week, I started noticing the patterns. Every house had the same curtains. Not just similar fabric or color. Identical. The exact same pattern, the exact same tiebacks, hanging in the exact same way. And the lights. Every single house on my street, all 47 of them, turned their lights on at exactly 7 p.m. I watched one evening from my window. 7 o'clock hit, and like dominoes, every house lit up simultaneously. At exactly 10 p.m., they all went dark. Every single one. I thought maybe it was some kind of coordinated effort. An energy-saving thing. Or maybe everyone just had similar routines. But the precision was unsettling. I started paying closer attention. People didn't leave their houses much. I'd see the same faces at the same times. Mrs. Henderson walking her dog at 6:45 a.m. Mr. Patel getting his mail at exactly 4:30 p.m. The Rodriguez family leaving for somewhere at 8:15 a.m. on weekdays, returning at 5:30 p.m. Every day. Same times. Same routes. Same mechanical movements. I worked as a freelance graphic designer, so my schedule was flexible. Chaotic really. Some nights I'd work until 2 in the morning. Other days I'd finish by noon. I didn't think anything of it until the violations started. The first one came after I worked late on a Tuesday. I'd been on a deadline, lost track of time, and didn't realize it was 11 p.m. until I stood up to stretch. My lights were on. The rest of the street was dark. Completely dark. Not a single porch light. Not a single window glowing. Just my house lit up like a beacon. Next morning, there was a notice taped to my door. Printed on official Riverside Meadows letterhead. HOA violation notice. Unapproved activity hours, 11 p.m. to 11:47 p.m. Fine, $500. I stared at the paper, reading it 3 times to make sure I understood. They were fining me for having my lights on past 10? That couldn't be legal. I checked my HOA contract. Buried in Section 12, subsection 7, residents must adhere to community lighting schedules to maintain neighborhood harmony and security standards. I knocked on my neighbor's door. Her name was Patricia, maybe 60 years old, gray hair always pulled into a tight bun, soft-spoken and kind during our brief previous interactions. I showed her the notice. "Is this for real?" I asked. "They're fining me for working late?" She looked at the paper, then at me, and something shifted in her expression. Quick and fleeting, but unmistakable. "Don't break the schedule," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder into her own house. "They're watching." "Who's watching?" She started to close the door. "Patricia, wait. Who's watching?" "Just follow the rules, Jolene. It's easier that way." The door clicked shut. Over the next few weeks, I tried to conform. Lights on at 7. Lights off at 10. I set alarms. I adjusted my work schedule. But it felt wrong. Oppressive. Like I was living in a prison pretending to be a suburb. A month later, I planned a weekend trip to visit my sister in Flagstaff. I told Patricia I'd be gone Saturday and Sunday. She looked nervous but said nothing. Friday night, I packed my car. Saturday morning at 6 a.m., I drove to the front gate. The guard, a man I'd seen dozens of times, stopped me. "Where are you headed, Miss Hartley?" "Visiting family. I'll be back Sunday evening." He made a call. spoke quietly into his radio, then looked back at me with an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your vehicle is showing a mechanical issue. For safety reasons, we can't let you exit until it's inspected. My car is fine. Protocol. We've called a tow truck. Should be here within the hour." I sat there, fuming as a tow truck arrived. The driver, a young guy with grease-stained hands, barely looked at my car before declaring it needed immediate repair. Estimated fix time, Monday morning. I walked back to my house, furious. As I turned the corner onto my street, I saw my car in the distance. The tow truck driver started it on the first try. The engine purred perfectly. He drove it out the gate without any issue whatsoever. They'd lied. They deliberately kept me from leaving. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my laptop and searched for the Riverside Meadows Community Facebook group. It was private, residents only, mostly filled with complaints about landscaping and reminders about HOA meetings. But I found something. A post from 3 months earlier. "Does anyone ever actually leave here? Like for good? Has anyone moved out since the development opened?" The post had no replies. But as I watched, it disappeared, deleted in real time. I started taking screenshots of everything. I needed answers. I approached my neighbor across the street, a man named Wendell who'd lived here for 5 years according to Patricia. He was in his early 40s, thinning hair, always wore business casual even on weekends. "Can I ask you something?" I said, catching him as he checked his mail at exactly 4:30. He looked around nervously before nodding. "Have you ever tried to leave? Like move out?" His face went pale. "Come inside," he said quietly. Quickly. His house was identical to mine. Same layout, same fixtures, same beige walls. He led me to his kitchen and pulled out a folder stuffed with papers. HOA violation notices. Hundreds of them. "I've been here 5 years," he said. "I tried to leave after the first year. They rejected my move-out request. Said I hadn't fulfilled my residency requirement." "What requirement?" He showed me the contract. Section 23. Minimum residency term of 10 years required before transfer of property or termination of agreement. 10 years? That's insane. "It gets worse," he said, flipping through the notices. "Every time I violated the schedule, I got fined. The fines escalated. 500. 1,000. 5,000. The final warnings mentioned removal from community. I felt my chest tighten. What does that mean? Removal? Wendell's hands shook as he poured himself water. 2 years ago, there was a couple 3 houses down. The Mercados. They fought the HOA constantly. Refused to follow the schedules. Refused to pay the fines. One night, there was an incident. Security came. They were escorted out. So they got evicted? He shook his head. They vanished, Jolene. Their social media went dark. Their phone numbers disconnected. I tried to find them. Public records, mutual friends, everything. It's like they never existed. That's impossible. I thought so too. Until it happened to the Chens. Then the Abbotts. Then the Williamson family. 4 families in 5 years. All removed. All vanished. I left Wendell's house feeling sick. 2 weeks later, I decided to test them. I needed to know what would happen if I deliberately broke their rules. If I could force their hand and expose whatever was really happening here. I turned off all my lights at 8 p.m. Then I left my house at 11:30. Walked down the middle of the street in the darkness. The neighborhood was silent. Not a single sound. No dogs barking. No air conditioners humming. Just suffocating silence. Then I heard it. An alarm. Not from any house. From underground. A deep, mechanical wail that vibrated through the pavement beneath my feet. It made my teeth ache and my vision blur. The ground opened. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not embellishing. Sections of the street, the sidewalks, the perfectly manicured lawns, they split apart like massive trapdoors, revealing maintenance tunnels underneath. Bright fluorescent lights spilled out. And from those tunnels came figures. They wore white coveralls. Head to toe. Their movements were synchronized. Perfectly coordinated. Too perfect. They emerged from hatches hidden beneath every single house's foundation. I stood frozen as dozens of them poured into the neighborhood. Wendell appeared beside me, grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise, and dragged me toward his house. You idiot, he hissed. You triggered the audit. What are they? Shut up and move. He pulled me inside and locked the door. We watched through his window as the figures moved systematically through the neighborhood. They entered homes through basement doors I'd never noticed before. I could see into my neighbors' houses through their windows. The figures were examining residents, scanning them with handheld devices. Some kind of technology I'd never seen before. Most residents passed. They stood calmly, arms at their sides, while the figures scanned them and moved on. But some didn't pass. Mrs. Kowalski from 2 houses down. The figure scanned her, and a red light flashed. 2 more figures appeared. They took her arms gently but firmly. She didn't scream. Didn't fight. Just walked with them toward the open tunnel. The entrance swallowed her. I heard a brief scream from underground, then silence. 3 more residents. Same procedure. Failed scans. Escorted underground. Screams. Silence. Wendell was breathing hard beside me. The development wasn't built for us, he said. It was already here. 10 years ago, the original homeowners discovered the tunnels. They were going to report it. Go to the media. But the entities made them an offer. Follow the schedule. Maintain the appearance of normalcy. Never investigate. Never tell outsiders. In exchange, perfect safety. No crime. No break-ins. No problems. What are they? We don't know. But they need us. We're camouflage. They need the surface to look normal. Occupied. We maintain the illusion while they do whatever they do down there. My door opened. I watched from Wendell's window as one of the figures entered my house. It stood in my living room, motionless for a moment, then pulled out a device. Scanning for me. It walked to Wendell's house. Wendell looked at me, terrified. I have to let it in. If I don't, we both fail. He opened the door. The figure stood in the doorway. Up close, I could see it wasn't human. The proportions were wrong. Arms too long. Neck too thin. The coveralls hid most of its form, but the wrongness was undeniable. It raised the device and scanned me. A mechanical voice spoke. Resident Jolene Hartley. Compliance score. Insufficient. Violations. Multiple. Recommendation. Behavioral correction protocol. Escalation. Level 3. What does that mean? I whispered. It means they're taking you, Wendell said. The figure reached for me. Wendell tackled it. The 2 of them crashed into the hallway. Wendell screamed at me to run. I did. I ran through his back door, jumped his fence, sprinted through yards. More figures emerged from hatches, but I was faster. Adrenaline made me faster. I climbed the perimeter fence, cutting my hands on the barbed wire at the top, and dropped into the desert on the other side. I ran until I hit the highway. Flagged down a semi-truck. The driver took me to the nearest police station. They didn't believe me. Of course they didn't. The officers checked their computers. There's no riverside meadows in our jurisdiction, one said. Yes, there is. I was just there. They pulled up maps. Satellite images. The area I described showed empty desert. No development. No houses. No roads. I showed them the address on my phone. They drove me there in a patrol car. Empty desert. Nothing but sand and scrub brush. One officer, older guy with kind eyes, pulled me aside while his partner waited in the car. I've heard stories, he said quietly. Developments that aren't developments. Testing sites. Government projects. Things that exist in one reality but not in others. What does that mean? He looked genuinely sad. It means you're not crazy. But it also means there's nothing we can do. A week later, I received an email. No sender name. Just a string of numbers. Subject: Lease Violation Resolution. Your recent unauthorized departure has been noted. However, in light of your brief residency period and limited exposure to community protocols, your violations have been forgiven. You have 48 hours to return and resume standard compliance. Failure to return will result in contract enforcement protocols. I looked at the contract I'd signed. Found Section 41. In the event of unauthorized termination of residency, the HOA reserves the right to enforce contract fulfillment through any means necessary, including but not limited to asset seizure, credit destruction, legal action, and physical reclamation of resident. I stared at that last phrase. Physical reclamation of resident. I didn't sign a lease. I signed a habitation agreement. I'm not a tenant. I'm a participant in something I still don't understand. And the experiment isn't over. Last night, I woke to a sound outside my new apartment 300 miles away. The mechanical whir of something opening. I looked out my window and saw them. 4 figures in white coveralls. Standing in the parking lot. Staring up at my window. They found me. And I don't think I can run forever. In Frost Hollow, it snows every day from November to March. If you shovel your driveway before 6 a.m., something comes to help you. I learned that rule too late. My name's Delbert, and I took a teaching job in Frost Hollow, Montana 3 years ago. Population 400. Maybe less now. It's the kind of town that barely exists on maps, tucked between 2 mountain ranges in a valley that seems to collect cold like a bowl collects water. The job posting said they were desperate for teachers. High school English. Good pay. Housing included. I'd just gone through a brutal breakup, lost my apartment in Missoula, and needed to get away from everything. Frost Hollow seemed perfect. Isolated. Quiet. A place where I could disappear for a while and figure out my life. I should have questioned why they were so desperate. I drove into town on a gray October afternoon. The place looked like something from a postcard. Small main street with a diner, a general store, a post office, and a church with a white steeple. Houses spread out along winding roads, most of them old craftsman style with big porches and stone chimneys. Mountains surrounded everything, their peaks already dusted with early snow. My rental was on the edge of town. A small 2-bedroom house with blue siding and a metal roof. The landlord, a man named Virgil Kowalski, met me there with the keys. He was probably 70, weathered face, thick beard, eyes that had seen too many winters. He handed me a folder with the lease and other documents. Rules of the house, he said, tapping the folder. Read them tonight. All of them. Sure, I said, eager to just get inside and unpack. He grabbed my arm. Not a suggestion, son. Read them. Especially Rule 7. I nodded, unsettled by his intensity. That night, after unpacking and eating cold pizza, I finally opened the folder. Most of the rules were standard. No smoking inside. Trash pickup on Thursdays. Quiet hours after 10 p.m. But Rule 7 stood out. Never shovel your driveway before first light. Under any circumstances. If you must clear snow in darkness, hire the approved service. Do not shovel yourself. Do not accept help from others. Wait for daylight. I read it 3 times. What kind of rule was that? I texted Virgil. Why can't I shovel before dawn? His response came immediately. If you do, someone will help you. And you don't want that help. Trust me. Wait for light. I didn't understand, but I was too tired to care. November hit hard. Snow started falling and didn't stop. Not blizzards, just constant steady snowfall. Every morning I'd wake up to 3 or 4 inches of fresh powder. The town seemed to function normally. People cleared their driveways, went to work, kids went to school. Everyone shoveled after sunrise. I settled into a routine. Teaching wasn't bad. The kids were quiet, respectful in that way small-town kids are. I had a few beers at the diner on Friday nights. Made small talk with the locals. They were friendly enough, but distant. Like they were waiting to see if I'd make it through the winter. December came. The snow got heavier. One Wednesday night, my principal called. Emergency faculty meeting the next morning. 7 a.m. Early. I'd need to leave my house by 6:15 at the latest. Thursday morning, my alarm went off at 5:30. Still dark outside. I looked out my window and saw at least 8 inches of fresh snow in my driveway. No way I could get my car out without clearing it. I remembered the rule. Virgil's warning. But it was just snow. And I had a meeting. I couldn't miss the first emergency meeting of the year. I bundled up, grabbed my shovel, and went outside at 5:40 a.m. The cold hit me like a wall. -15, according to my phone. My breath crystallized immediately. The sky was still completely dark, no hint of dawn yet. I started shoveling. The work warmed me up quickly. My breath came in clouds. The scraping of metal on pavement was the only sound in the entire neighborhood. No cars. No wind. Just me and the snow. Then I heard it. Another shovel. Scraping in perfect rhythm with mine. I stopped and looked up. At the end of my driveway, barely visible in the glow of my porch light, stood a man. Tall, impossibly thin. Wearing an old-fashioned winter coat. The kind with a belt and fur collar. His face was hidden behind a thick wool scarf and the shadow of a wide-brimmed hat. He was shoveling. His movements matched mine exactly. Same rhythm. Same pace. When I'd stopped, he continued for 2 more scrapes, then stopped as well. Hey, I called out. Thanks, but I've got it. I'm good. He didn't respond. Didn't move. Just stood there, shovel in his hands. I went back to work, unnerved but trying to rationalize it. Small town. Neighborly. Maybe this was normal here. Maybe he was just being helpful. I shoveled for another 5 minutes. He shoveled too. Perfectly synchronized. Within 10 minutes, my entire driveway was clear. Perfectly clear. Not a trace of snow remained. The man stood at the end of the driveway and bowed. A slow, formal bow. Then he turned and walked toward my neighbor's house. He stopped at the end of their driveway and stood there. Waiting. Just standing motionless in the pre-dawn darkness. My neighbor's porch light snapped on. Mrs. Chen, an older woman who lived alone, opened her door, saw the figure, and screamed. A raw, terrified scream that cut through the frozen air. The figure tilted its head. Slowly. like a curious dog. Then it turned and walked into the woods behind the houses. It didn't trudge through the snow. It glided over it, leaving no footprints. I stood there, shovel in hand, heart pounding. Mrs. Chen slammed her door. Her lights went off. The street went silent again. I got in my car and drove to school, hands shaking on the wheel. At the meeting, I sat next to Peggy, the art teacher who'd been in Frost Hollow for 15 years. During the break, I told her what happened. Her face went white. You shoveled before dawn?
Yeah.
This morning.
I had to get...
She grabbed my wrist. Did it help you? I nodded. She stood up quickly, almost knocking over her coffee. You need to talk to Harold. Right now. Harold Nesmith was the town's oldest resident. 93 years old, still sharp, spent most of his time at the diner drinking coffee and reading the newspaper. Peggy drove me there after the meeting. Harold listened to my story without interrupting. When I finished, he sighed deeply and folded his newspaper. You shoveled before dawn, he repeated. I nodded. Then it knows where you live. And it'll come back.
What is it?
He looked out the window at the falling snow. In 1952, there was a road maintenance worker named Jacob Frost. Moved here from Minnesota that year. Good man. Hard worker. That winter was brutal. Worst in 50 years. Roads kept getting buried. Jacob worked around the clock trying to keep them clear. One night in February, he went out during a blizzard to clear the main road. Temperature dropped to 40 below. His truck broke down. He got out to fix it. Kept working. Kept shoveling. Clearing the road. Harold paused, took a sip of coffee. They found him 3 days later. Frozen solid. Still holding his shovel. Still standing. But here's the thing. The road around him was completely clear. Perfectly clear. Like he'd kept working even after he died. Town buried him, said some words, moved on. But the next winter, people started reporting something strange. If anyone shoveled before dawn, they'd see a man in old-fashioned winter clothes helping them. At first, people thought it was nice. Helpful. But then the pattern emerged. What pattern? He helps you once, that's fine. But he comes back. Second time, he expects you to help him. And if you help him, you owe him. Third time, you belong to him. I felt ice in my veins. What does that mean? Harold showed me an old photograph. Black and white. A group of men standing in snow, holding shovels. One man was circled in red. Tall, thin, wearing an old coat with a fur collar. That's Jacob Frost. Last confirmed photo taken 2 weeks before he died. Every person who's helped him shovel, every person who's accepted his help 3 times, they vanish. We find them in spring when the snow melts. Frozen. Still holding shovels. Still clearing paths that don't need clearing. You're saying he's dead? A ghost? Harold shook his head. I'm saying he never stopped working. Death didn't stop him. Cold didn't stop him. He's still out there, still clearing snow, and anyone who helps him joins his crew. Forever. That night, I lay awake, jumping at every sound. At 2 a.m. I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. I looked through the peephole. The figure stood on my porch, shovel in hand. Behind him, barely visible in the darkness, was a mound of snow shaped disturbingly like a human body. Curled up. Frozen. The figure gestured toward the street. Come outside. I backed away from the door. He began shoveling again. But backwards. Piling snow onto my driveway. Against my door. Against my windows. The snow accumulated impossibly fast. Within minutes, it was 3 feet high. Then 4. Then 5. He was burying my house. I called 911. The line was dead. Snow on the phone lines, I thought, but I knew that wasn't the real reason. I ran to the back door. It was already buried. I tried the windows. All buried. I was being entombed in my own house. The basement. I remembered there was a window well in the basement. Small, but I could fit through it. I ran downstairs, pushed the old window open, and climbed out into the freezing night. The figure was waiting in my backyard. He pointed at a shovel lying in the snow at my feet. I understood then. The deal. If I shoveled, he would help. If he helped, I owed him. If I owed him, eventually I'd pay. But my house was being buried. I'd freeze to death if I stayed outside. I'd suffocate if I stayed inside. I grabbed the shovel and started clearing the snow from my door. Immediately he stopped. He stood perfectly still, watching me work. After 10 minutes of frantic shoveling, I'd cleared a path to my door. The figure bowed again. He turned and walked into the woods, his form fading into the darkness and snow. I moved out the next day, packed everything, broke the lease, drove straight to Billings and got a motel room. Virgil called me. You shoveled twice? I only shoveled once. You shoveled when he came. That's twice. Once in light. Once in darkness. What happens the third time? He didn't answer for a long time. Then, no one's made it past 3 times. At least, no one who could tell us what happened. I moved to Nevada. Found a job in Las Vegas. Desert. No snow. I thought I was safe. Last December, I woke up to snow on the ground outside my apartment. Fresh powder. In Las Vegas. In the desert. A shovel leaned against my door. Footprints led from the empty lot across the street to my doorstep. Every morning since, my car is clear of snow that doesn't fall. My sidewalk is shoveled by hands I never see. And every morning, the footprints get closer to my door. Last week, they reached my doorstep. This morning, they were inside my apartment. I think he's decided it's time for the 3rd shovel. And I don't think I can refuse anymore. Every house on Sycamore Drive looked identical. I didn't realize they were all the same house until I walked through my neighbor's front door. My name's Bernadette, and I bought my first home last year in Mapleton Grove, Ohio. At 28, I'd finally saved enough for a down payment. The market was brutal, and I'd been outbid on 6 properties before my realtor called about a new development on the east side of town. 12 houses. All the same model called the Oakmont. Modern construction, energy efficient, open floor plan. Affordable. Too affordable, honestly, but I convinced myself it was because it was a new development trying to attract buyers. The street was called Sycamore Drive, even though there wasn't a single sycamore tree anywhere near it. Just flat land that used to be farmland, now carved up into identical lots with identical houses painted identical shades of gray with white trim. I chose number 43. Middle of the street. Not too close to the entrance, not at the dead end. Perfect. I moved in on a Saturday in April. Beautiful spring day. The other houses were in various stages of occupancy. Some were lived in, some were still showing, some appeared empty. I met a few neighbors. Mr. Chen at number 47. The Kowalski family at number 39. Everyone seemed nice enough. Normal. The kind of neighbors who wave but don't bother you. The first weird thing happened in week 2. My mail was delivered to number 47 instead of 43. I walked over to retrieve it, knocked on Mr. Chen's door. Sorry about this, I said when he answered. Mail got mixed up. He handed me the stack. Happens all the time, he said. I get everyone's mail. I think the mailman gets confused because all the houses look the same. I laughed. Yeah, cookie-cutter suburban hell, right? He didn't laugh. Instead, he looked at me strangely. You live at 43?
Yeah.
That's weird. Come in for a second. I followed him inside. His layout was identical to mine. Living room on the left, kitchen on the right, stairs straight ahead. But as we walked toward his kitchen, I noticed something. You have the same scratch on your counter, I said, pointing at a 6-inch gouge in the laminate. I made that moving in. Dropped a box cutter. Mr. Chen stared at the scratch. I didn't make that. It's been there since I moved in 3 months ago. We both stood there, looking at identical scratches on identical counters in houses built by the same contractor. Probably just a manufacturing defect, I said, trying to rationalize it. Same supplier, same materials. But Mr. Chen walked to his bathroom and called me over. The tile in here. 3rd row from the bottom. It's loose. I've been meaning to fix it. I felt my stomach drop. I have the exact same loose tile. Same spot. His face went pale. I also have a water stain on my bedroom ceiling. Northeast corner. Looks like a dog's face. I do too. This was beyond coincidence. We started comparing notes. Same stuck window in the master bedroom. Same squeaky cabinet door in the kitchen. Same crack in the basement foundation. Every single unique flaw in my house existed in his. Over the next few days, I talked to other neighbors. The Kowalskis at 39. The Patels at 51. The Simmons at 44. Every single house had the identical damage. The identical quirks. The identical imperfections. Mrs. Simmons told me something that made my skin crawl. I tried to fix that loose tile last month, she said. Spent an hour regrouting it, sealing it perfectly. Next morning, it was loose again. Like the house reset itself overnight. I decided to test it. On a Friday night, I painted a bright red X on my living room wall. 2 feet wide. Impossible to miss. Then I went to bed. Saturday morning, the wall was pristine. Freshly painted white. No trace of the X. I grabbed my keys and ran to number 45. Knocked frantically until my neighbor, a man named Dale, answered. Your living room wall, I said breathlessly. Can I see it? He looked confused but let me in. There, on his wall in the exact spot where I'd painted it in my house, was the red X. I didn't paint that, he said, staring at it. It just appeared this morning. I thought my kid did it, but he swears he didn't touch it. I ran to every house on the street. 8 of the 12 were occupied. Each one had the X somewhere. Different rooms, different locations, but always the same size, same color, same shape. The house was moving damage between properties. Redistributing imperfections. Like they were all connected somehow. I went to the library and pulled property records. All 12 houses on Sycamore Drive sold on the same day. March 15th, same hour. Same minute. 10:47 a.m. Every single one simultaneously. The developer was listed as Oakmont Design Group. I searched for them. The company had dissolved in 1988. The original owner and architect was Thomas Oakmont. I found his obituary. Died on March 15, 1987, during the construction of a revolutionary modular housing concept in Mapleton Grove. Exactly 1 year before all the houses sold. I requested his files from the city archives. They had his journal. The final entries were barely legible. Shaky handwriting. Obsessive scrawling. February 10, 1987. The design is almost perfect. If I can make the house truly eternal, if I can make it exist beyond physical space, it will never decay. Never fail. One house, infinite iterations. February 28, 1987. The blueprint is alive. I can feel it. When I draw, the house understands. When I erase, the house corrects. It's learning. Adapting. It wants to be perfect. March 14, 1987. Tomorrow is the final test. I'll build all 12 simultaneously using the living blueprint. They won't be 12 houses. There'll be 12 instances of the same house existing in parallel. The residents are temporary. The house is forever. March 15, 1987. It's working. Oh God, it's working. But I can't stop it. The house is merging. The boundaries are collapsing. I'm inside all of them at once. I can see through every wall. I'm the house. The house is... The entry ended mid-sentence. That night, things got worse. I unlocked my front door and stepped into Mr. Chen's kitchen. Not his house. Just his kitchen. Like the rooms had rearranged. I ran back outside. Tried again. This time I walked into my own hallway, but when I opened what should have been my bedroom door, I was in the Kowalski's basement. Space was collapsing. The houses were bleeding into each other. I called everyone. Emergency meeting in the street. All 12 homeowners gathered, some terrified, some angry, most just confused. We can't leave, Mrs. Patel said. I tried to drive away an hour ago. Got in my car, drove to the end of the street. When I turned the corner, I was back at the beginning. I drove in circles for 20 minutes. We're trapped. Someone suggested calling the police. Mr. Chen pulled out his phone. No signal. None of us had signals. We need to find the original blueprint, Dale said. If the design is alive, maybe we can destroy it. Kill it somehow. We decided to search together. Started with the model home at the end of the street, number 54. It was supposed to be empty, staged for showings. But when we opened the door, we found ourselves in someone's lived-in house. Furniture we recognized from number 39. But we were in 54. The houses were merging. We ran to what we thought was Mr. Chen's attic. All 12 of us climbing the same stairs. But when we reached the top, we were all standing in the same attic. One attic. Existing in 12 places simultaneously. In the center of the room was a drafting table. On it, the blueprint. It wasn't paper. It was something else. Something organic. The lines moved. Shifted. Redrew themselves as we watched. The design was alive. Breathing. Thinking. Written in the margins, in that same shaky handwriting. The house must be perfect. The house must be eternal. The residents are temporary. The house is forever. We are the house. The house is us. We cannot leave because we are already inside. We have always been inside. As I read the words, the walls started moving. Not metaphorically. Actually moving. Sliding. Rearranging. The room stretched, the ceiling lowered, the floor tilted. Mrs. Simmons screamed. Her arm was sinking into the wall. The drywall had become permeable, liquid. She tried to pull free, but the wall held her, absorbing her slowly. Dale shouted. We scattered, but every door led to the same place. Back to the center. We were running through 12 different living rooms that were all the same living room. I saw my neighbors running parallel to me, visible through walls that were becoming transparent. We were all occupying the same space, the same house, just phased slightly apart. The blueprint was pulling us in, making us part of the design. I saw Mr. Chen disappear into a floor that opened beneath him like water. The Kowalskis merged with a wall, their bodies becoming part of the structure. Mrs. Patel's screams echoed from everywhere and nowhere. I ran for what I thought was an exit, threw myself through a door, and woke up in a hospital bed. White walls, antiseptic smell, machines beeping steadily. A nurse stood over me, checking my vitals. What happened? I croaked. Gas leak, she said gently. Entire street evacuated. You were unconscious in your home. Carbon monoxide poisoning. You're lucky the fire department found you in time. What about the others? The other homeowners? She looked confused. What others? You're the only one who bought a house there. A fire marshal came in later, showed me property records. Only one house sold on Sycamore Drive. Number 43. Numbers 44 through 54 were listed as model homes, unoccupied. Always had been. But I met them, I insisted. I was in their houses. I talked to them. Mr. Chen, the Kowalskis, Mrs. Patel. Ma'am, he said carefully, those houses are empty. They've always been empty. The developer went bankrupt before they could sell them. Your house was the only one that closed escrow. He showed me photos taken that morning. Empty houses. No furniture. No signs of life. Untouched. But I met them, I whispered. The marshal exchanged looks with the nurse. The doctor thinks the carbon monoxide exposure may have caused hallucinations. Very vivid ones. It's common with prolonged exposure. They released me 3 days later. Told me I couldn't return to the house until it was inspected and cleared. I went back to get my belongings a week later. The street was silent. Empty. I walked to number 47. Peered through the window. Empty. No furniture. No Mr. Chin. But on the kitchen counter, I saw it. The scratch. 6 inches long. Identical to mine. I checked every house. All empty. But each one had the damages. The loose tile. The water stain. The stuck window. The squeaky cabinet. Every single one. And in each house, in different rooms, I saw them. Faces pressed against interior walls. Trapped inside the structure itself. Mr. Chen's face emerging from the drywall in number 47. Mrs. Patel's hand reaching from the ceiling in number 51. The Kowalskis visible through the floor of number 39. All of them watching me. All of them mouthing the same words. Help us. They weren't hallucinations. They were real. They're still real. Trapped inside the house. Because they are the house. The house absorbed them. Made them part of its eternal structure. I ran to my car and drove away. Didn't stop until I was 50 miles gone. Yesterday, I got a call from a real estate agent. Chipper voice. Excited. Ms. Bernadette? Great news. The Sycamore Drive development is opening up again. New buyers. 12 families moving in next month. They asked if you'd be willing to speak with them, current resident to future residents. Give them your honest review of the neighborhood. I tried to warn them. I called every number I could find. But when I gave them the address, they said I was giving them 12 different addresses. All on Sycamore Drive. All the same house number. Each family thinks they're buying number 43. Because there is only one house. It's just showing itself 12 different ways. And soon, there will be 12 more residents who can't leave. Because you don't live in the house. The house lives in you. The women in my neighborhood grew the most beautiful gardens. I joined their club to make friends. 3 months later, I found out what they were using as fertilizer. My name's Loretta, and I moved to Willowbrook, Pennsylvania last spring after getting promoted to regional sales director for a pharmaceutical company. It was a huge step up. Better pay, better title, and it meant relocating from my cramped Philadelphia apartment to an actual house in the suburbs. Willowbrook was perfect. Or it seemed that way. Tree-lined streets. Well-maintained homes. Low crime. Good schools, even though I didn't have kids. The kind of place where people still said hello to strangers and knew their neighbors' names. I closed on a 3-bedroom colonial in early April. The previous owners had left the yard in decent shape, but it was nothing special. Basic grass. A few shrubs. A small flower bed along the front walkway that was mostly weeds. My neighbor Margaret appeared the day I moved in. She was maybe 65, silver hair styled perfectly, wearing a lavender cardigan despite the warm weather. She carried a basket covered with a checkered cloth. "Welcome to the neighborhood, dear," she said, handing me the basket. "Homemade blueberry scones. I'm Margaret Holloway. I live 3 doors down, the yellow house with the white shutters." The scones were incredible. Best I'd ever had. We talked for a few minutes on my porch. She asked about my job, where I was from, if I had family in the area. Normal neighbors' small talk. But then she looked at my sad little flower bed and smiled. "You should join our garden guild," she said. "We meet every Thursday evening. It's a wonderful way to meet people. And we'd love to help you make your yard beautiful." "I'm not really a gardener," I admitted. "I kill everything I touch." "Nonsense. We'll teach you everything you need to know. Plus, we have a special soil mixture. Family recipe. Works wonders." I agreed, mostly because I was lonely. New city, new job, no friends yet. A gardening club sounded wholesome. A nice way to integrate into the community. The first meeting was the following Thursday at Margaret's house. When I arrived, there were 8 women total, all between 50 and 70 years old. They welcomed me like I was joining an exclusive sorority. Warm hugs, enthusiastic introductions, genuine interest in my life. Margaret's house was immaculate. Victorian style, beautifully restored, and her garden was absolutely stunning. Roses that looked professional. Tomatoes the size of softballs. Vegetables I couldn't even identify, growing in lush abundance. And this was only late April. Most of this shouldn't have been blooming yet. "You grow all this yourself?" I asked amazed. "We all do," said Diane, a thin woman with gray hair and kind eyes. "Wait until you see Barbara's dahlias. And Ruth's herb garden. We have a gift, I suppose." "It's the soil," Margaret corrected, leading me to her basement. "Let me show you." The basement was finished, clean, and at the far end was a door I assumed led to a storage room. Margaret unlocked it. Inside was a greenhouse. Not a small hobby setup. A massive, professional-grade greenhouse with grow lights, irrigation systems, and rows upon rows of plants. Some I recognized. Many I didn't. "This is where we make our special soil," Margaret explained. Family tradition going back generations. In the center of the greenhouse was a large composting system. Industrial size. The kind you'd see at a botanical garden, not a suburban basement. The women gave me a bag of their soil. Dark, rich, almost black. It had a sweet, earthy smell. Pleasant but unusual. "Just mix it with your regular soil," Margaret instructed. "Half and half. Plant whatever you'd like. You'll see results immediately. We guarantee it." I thanked them, took the bag home, and that night I planted roses along my front walkway. Mixed the guild soil with my own like Margaret said. Watered them. Went to bed thinking I'd made some nice friends. The next morning, I walked outside to get my newspaper and stopped dead. The roses were in full bloom. Massive, perfect blooms. After one night, I stood there staring, trying to rationalize it. Maybe they were already budding. Maybe I just hadn't noticed. But I knew that wasn't true. These were bare root roses I'd bought at the garden center. They shouldn't bloom for months. Over the next week, my garden exploded. The roses multiplied. New shoots appeared overnight. Vines climbed my porch posts. My small vegetable garden, which I'd planted on a whim, produced tomatoes the size of grapefruits. Neighbors stopped to compliment my yard. People I'd never met asked what my secret was. The guild members were thrilled. They visited, congratulated me, took photos. "The soil really likes you," Diane said, patting my hand. "That's wonderful. Not everyone is compatible." "Compatible?" I asked. Margaret laughed. "Just a joke, dear. Some people have a green thumb. Some don't. You clearly do." But something felt off. My plants grew too fast. Too perfectly. And they kept growing. At night, I'd hear rustling outside. Soft sounds of movement. Like something shifting in the garden. One night, I couldn't sleep. I went to the window and looked at my garden in the moonlight. The vines were moving. Actually moving. Growing in real time, climbing higher up the house, spreading wider across the yard. I told myself it was wind. But there was no wind. The next Thursday, Margaret invited me to see the source of the soil. "The real source," she said. "It's time you understood what makes it work." I followed her back to the greenhouse. The other women were already there, standing in a semicircle around the composting system. "This is where we make the soil," Margaret said. "I told you it's a family tradition. Let me show you the secret ingredient." She opened the large compost bin. I leaned in to look, and saw teeth. Human teeth. Scattered throughout the dark soil like seeds. I jumped back, hand over my mouth, stomach lurching. The women didn't react with alarm. They looked disappointed. Said even. "We hoped you'd understand before we had to explain," Margaret said gently. Diane stepped forward. "We're not killers, dear. We're gardeners. There's a difference." That's, I couldn't form words. Barbara, a plump woman with rosy cheeks, pulled out a photo album. "Look," she said, opening it. "These are our husbands." Page after page of wedding photos. Anniversary photos. Happy couples. "All of us are widows," Barbara continued. "All of us loved our husbands dearly. And all of them are buried in the Willowbrook Cemetery." She closed the album. "Except they're not." "Not really," Margaret explained calmly, as if discussing a recipe. "When my Henry died 10 years ago, I couldn't bear the thought of him rotting in the ground. Sealed in a box. Wasting. He loved gardens. He loved life. So I brought him home. Put him where he belonged. In the earth. Feeding life instead of rotting uselessly." "You composted your husband?" I whispered, horrified. "All of us did," Diane said. "And look what happened. Our gardens became magnificent. The plants grew like never before. Beautiful. Abundant. Eternal. Our husbands became part of something greater. They're still with us. Just in a different form." Margaret walked to a rose bush with deep red blooms. "These are Henry's roses. He's in them now. Part of them. When I smell these roses, I smell him. When I touch these petals, I touch him. He's not gone. He's transformed." I backed toward the door. "You're all insane." Ruth, who'd been silent until now, spoke softly. "The roses your husband loved? He's in them now." "I don't have a husband," I said. The women's expressions changed. Shifted from warm to worried. "Oh dear," Margaret said. "Oh no. We thought when you moved in alone, older woman, no ring, we assumed widow." Diane touched my arm gently. "The soil's already bonded with you. It's in your garden now.
So what?
Margaret looked genuinely sad. The soil needs to be fed. It expects a cycle. You plant, it grows, you feed it, it grows more. We feed it our departed loved ones. Our husbands gave their bodies to the earth willingly, through us. But you don't have anyone to feed it. I don't have anyone to feed it, I repeated slowly. Then it will take what it needs, Ruth said quietly. I ran. Didn't grab my bag. Didn't say goodbye. Just ran out of that basement and drove straight home. My garden had grown massive in the few hours I'd been gone. Vines covered my entire house. The front door was wrapped in thorned roses. I tried to approach, but the thorns cut me. Deep, vicious cuts. I grabbed pruning shears from my garage and started cutting the vines away. They bled when I cut them. Not sap. Blood. Actual red human blood. I dropped the shears and stumbled backward. The vines moved. Deliberately. They reached for me. Wrapped around my ankles. The thorns bit into my skin. They dragged me toward the garden bed. I screamed and fought, but the vines were strong. Impossibly strong. That's when I heard the voices. Whispers coming from the roses. From the tomato plants. From every bloom and leaf and stem. Men's names. Henry.
George.
William.
Robert.
The husbands. Still aware. Still conscious. Trapped in the plants. Feed us, they whispered. Feed us, Loretta. We're so hungry. So empty. Feed us or join us. I grabbed my car keys from my pocket and jabbed them into the vine wrapped around my leg. It shrieked. An actual human scream from plant matter. The vines released me. I ran to my car and drove away, blood running down my legs. I called the fire department from a gas station. Told them my house was overgrown and needed to be cleared. They sent a crew. By the time I returned, they'd cut down everything.
Burned it all.
But the next morning, it had grown back. Bigger than before. The guild showed up at my hotel. You can't kill it, Margaret said sadly. It's rooted too deep now. In your soil. In your foundation. In your blood. You accepted it. You fed it. It bonded with you. You have two choices, Diane said. Feed it properly. Or become the food. I moved to Nevada.
Desert.
No plants. No soil. No gardens. But roses started sprouting from cracks in my apartment's concrete patio. Vines grew through my bathroom pipes. Every morning, I'd find rose petals on my pillow. Last week, I woke up to a vine growing through my bedroom wall. It had wrapped around my bedpost. And in the leaves, I heard whispers. Feed us, Loretta. Feed us or join us. We're so hungry. You promised. You planted us. You fed us. We're yours now.
Forever.
Margaret called me yesterday. She didn't say hello. Just, there's a support group for women like you. Gardeners without gardens. We meet monthly. We help each other find solutions. What kind of solutions? I asked. There's always someone willing to be planted, dear. You just have to know where to dig. She sent me a list. Names and addresses. People who were dying. Terminal patients. Hospice residents. People who'd already made peace with death. She said they'd be grateful. To become part of something beautiful. Something eternal. I'm looking at the list right now. And I'm starting to understand. The garden needs to be fed. And I'm so very tired of running. Page after page of wedding photos. Anniversary photos. Happy couples. All of us are widows, Barbara continued. All of us loved our husbands dearly. And all of them are buried in the Willowbrook Cemetery. She closed the album. Except they're not. Not really. Margaret explained calmly, as if discussing a recipe. When my Henry died 10 years ago, I couldn't bear the thought of him rotting in the ground. Sealed in a box. Wasting. He loved gardens. He loved life. So I brought him home. Put him where he belonged. In the earth. Feeding life instead of rotting uselessly. You composted your husband? I whispered, horrified. All of us did, Diane said. And look what happened. Our gardens became magnificent. The plants grew like never before. Beautiful. Abundant. Eternal. Our husbands became part of something greater. They're still with us. Just in a different form. Margaret walked to a rose bush with deep red blooms. These are Henry's roses. He's in them now. Part of them. When I smell these roses, I smell him. When I touch these petals, I touch him. He's not gone. He's transformed. I backed toward the door. You're all insane. Ruth, who'd been silent until now, spoke softly. The roses your husband loved? He's in them now. I don't have a husband, I said. The women's expressions changed. Shifted from warm to worried. Oh dear, Margaret said. Oh no. We thought when you moved in alone, older woman, no ring, we assumed widow. Diane touched my arm gently. The soil's already bonded with you. It's in your garden now. So what? Margaret looked genuinely sad. The soil needs to be fed. It expects a cycle. You plant, it grows, you feed it, it grows more. We feed it our departed loved ones. Our husbands gave their bodies to the earth willingly, through us. But you don't have anyone to feed it. I don't have anyone to feed it, I repeated slowly. Then it will take what it needs, Ruth said quietly. I ran. Didn't grab my bag. Didn't say goodbye. Just ran out of that basement and drove straight home. My garden had grown massive in the few hours I'd been gone. Vines covered my entire house. The front door was wrapped in thorned roses. I tried to approach, but the thorns cut me. Deep, vicious cuts. I grabbed pruning shears from my garage and started cutting the vines away. They bled when I cut them. Not sap. Blood. Actual red human blood. I dropped the shears and stumbled backward. The vines moved. Deliberately. They reached for me. Wrapped around my ankles. The thorns bit into my skin. They dragged me toward the garden bed. I screamed and fought, but the vines were strong. Impossibly strong. That's when I heard the voices. Whispers coming from the roses. From the tomato plants. From every bloom and leaf and stem. Men's names. Henry. George. William. Robert. The husbands. Still aware. Still conscious. Trapped in the plants. Feed us, they whispered. Feed us, Loretta. We're so hungry. So empty. Feed us or join us. I grabbed my car keys from my pocket and jabbed them into the vine wrapped around my leg. It shrieked. An actual human scream from plant matter. The vines released me. I ran to my car and drove away, blood running down my legs. I called the fire department from a gas station. Told them my house was overgrown and needed to be cleared. They sent a crew. By the time I returned, they'd cut down everything. Burned it all. But the next morning, it had grown back. Bigger than before. The guild showed up at my hotel. You can't kill it, Margaret said sadly. It's rooted too deep now. In your soil. In your foundation. In your blood. You accepted it. You fed it. It bonded with you. You have two choices, Diane said. Feed it properly. Or become the food. I moved to Nevada. Desert. No plants. No soil. No gardens. But roses started sprouting from cracks in my apartment's concrete patio. Vines grew through my bathroom pipes. Every morning, I'd find rose petals on my pillow. Last week, I woke up to a vine growing through my bedroom wall. It had wrapped around my bedpost. And in the leaves, I heard whispers. Feed us, Loretta. Feed us or join us. We're so hungry. You promised. You planted us. You fed us. We're yours now. Forever. Margaret called me yesterday. She didn't say hello. Just, there's a support group for women like you. Gardeners without gardens. We meet monthly. We help each other find solutions. What kind of solutions? I asked. There's always someone willing to be planted, dear. You just have to know where to dig. She sent me a list. Names and addresses. People who were dying. Terminal patients. Hospice residents. People who'd already made peace with death. She said they'd be grateful. To become part of something beautiful. Something eternal. I'm looking at the list right now. And I'm starting to understand. The garden needs to be fed. And I'm so very tired of running. The moving company gave me a 90% discount because I was their special milestone customer. I found out what that meant when they started unloading boxes that weren't mine. I'm Rochelle, 29, and last year I moved cross-country to Sterling Heights, Michigan. Fresh start. New job. I hired Heritage Moving Company. Cheapest quote. Great reviews. Moving day, the crew was overly friendly. Kept calling me by the wrong name. Diane. Welcome home, Diane, the crew leader said as they started unloading. I'm Rochelle. He checked his paperwork. It says Diane Ashford. I'm Rochelle Chin. But the address was correct. My old address. Moving to my new address. Everything right except the name. The first boxes they unloaded weren't mine. Different dishes. Different books. Clothes too big. Wrong truck, I said. The crew leader frowned. Address is correct. Customer name, Diane Ashford. I called the company. Got transferred 6 times. Finally, someone said, we have no record of Rochelle Chin. But Diane Ashford's move completed successfully. Where are my boxes? Long silence. Were you given a special rate? 90% off. Milestone customer. What number milestone? Customer number 10,000. The rep hung up. The crew kept unloading Diane's belongings. I found photo albums. Pictures of a woman who looked like me. Same age. Same build. Same hair color. In my old apartment. My old city. My favorite cafe. Wearing my clothes. The crew leader explained. Special program. Every 10,000th customer gets upgraded. Upgraded to what? Better life. Someone else's life. Someone who wanted out. I found Diane's journal. Last entry, tomorrow is moving day. Heritage promised they'd handle everything. I just have to let go. Someone else will take over. Someone who needs a fresh start more than I do. I'm tired of being me. Let her have this life. This wasn't a mistake. It was an exchange program. Heritage Moving doesn't just move belongings. They move lives. Where are my things? I demanded. The crew leader showed me his tablet. My belongings being unloaded at a different address. A woman accepting boxes. She turned around. Diane. Wearing my clothes. Signing paperwork as Rochelle Chin. Exchange is voluntary, the crew leader said. Both parties agreed. I never agreed. He showed me the contract. The online quote I'd signed. Fine print at the bottom. Heritage Moving reserves right to assign customer identity as part of milestone transfer program. By signing, customer consents to life exchange protocols. I checked my wallet. My ID had changed. Diane Ashford. My photo. My phone. Contacts renamed. Emails addressed to Diane. My social media. Gone. Replaced with Diane's accounts. Same photos. Different name. I'd been replaced in my own life. I tried calling my mother. She answered. It's me. I'm sorry, who is this? It's Rochelle. Your daughter. I don't have a daughter named Rochelle. Is this a prank? She hung up. The exchange was complete. Reality had rewritten itself. Diane's work schedule showed I was expected at a job tomorrow. A job I didn't know how to do. Diane's therapist appointment next week. Diane's ex-husband calling about custody arrangements for kids I'd never met. Diane's note said, I'm sorry. I couldn't do it anymore. You seemed happy. I needed happy. I took it. Maybe you can fix mine. 6 months later, I got an email. Congratulations. You're our 20,000th customer. Click here to qualify for our milestone program. I looked around Diane's apartment. Still unfamiliar. Still wrong. Photo of Diane's kids on the counter. Kids I'm supposed to pick up tomorrow. My cursor hovered over the link. I thought about it for 3 hours. About passing this life to someone else. About taking another chance at happiness. The problem is, I don't know who I'd become next. And after 6 months of being Diane, I'm starting to forget who Rochelle was. Maybe that's the point. Maybe heritage moving doesn't swap lives. It erases them. One move at a time. I didn't click the link. But I saved the email. Just in case Diane's life gets too heavy. Just in case I need one more fresh start. Just in case I want to disappear again. New towns promise fresh starts. But sometimes you're not starting fresh. You're filling a vacancy someone else left behind. If these stories made you question your next move, smash that subscribe button so you never miss our weekly horror drops. Comment below which story disturbed you the most. And remember, read the fine print. Especially the parts written in disappearing ink. Thanks for watching. Sleep well. If you can.